Hello, English learners. Welcome back to the Level Up English podcast. Whether you are listening to this on your phone or maybe you're watching on YouTube, because that's a thing that I'm doing now, YouTube video podcasts. Wherever you're listening or watching, thank you for joining me. This is the first podcast guest of the year, and it's a really, really good one. I'm really excited today to introduce Adriana to you guys. Adriana is an online English coach from Australia, my first guest from Australia. I'm really excited to bring her on today. We spoke about many different things. Really, really exciting. She has a lot of great energy, a lot of great ideas on language learning, all this kind of stuff. As you will find out, she has been living in Croatia for I think about 10 years. I think it was quite a long time. So she has a really interesting experience learning Croatian, and she also shares her embarrassing mistakes at the end of the episode as well. So I'm going to give her a chance to introduce herself just now. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy it. So hello everyone, I am very happy to bring you Adriana today. So thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yes, I'm very glad you could be here. So would you mind giving us a quick introduction, however you like, about who you are, what you're doing?
So, my name's Adriana from EnglishTeacherAdriana.com. I have this standard introduction. It's so cliche. Oh, would you? So, I teach English online. I create content on social media, so YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Uh, what else would you like to know? It's so hard introducing myself. Like, do you want me to introduce
Yeah,
myself in English
it's
or?
very difficult. Yeah, and I'm sure you've given it like a million times as well. How about where did you say where you're from?
Yeah, no, I didn't. I think I'm just so confused by who's listening. And when I meet somebody, depending on the situation, I'm always confused. Okay, do I introduce myself as Adriana or as English with Adriana? And then, yeah,
Hmm.
anyway, I've just gone off a different tangent. Basically, I'm from Australia, born and raised. I moved to Croatia about 10 years ago. So I grew up in Australia, in Melbourne. Melbourne is one of the biggest. Sydney is the biggest city, and then you've got Melbourne after Sydney. Love Melbourne. It's a lot better than Sydney. Sorry to anybody from Sydney listening, but coffee in Melbourne is amazing. If you have the chance, go there. Very multicultural. I moved to Croatia at about 2021 because I was young, dumb, and why not? I wanted to take a risk in life a little bit. Came here, and over the last about 10 years, I've been teaching English. For the last 7, 8 years, teaching English online. I speak Croatian fluently. And what else? Speak Croatian fluently. I like tennis. I like running, hiking, and I'm a very active person. Cooking. I like cooking because I like eating. And yeah, I think I've gone through everything now.
That's awesome. That's perfect. Really good, really good. I've never been to Australia, but if I do, I'll be sure to go to Melbourne first. But
Please do. Please do.
wow, that's really cool. And yeah, I think it's really exciting that you've had this experience living in a foreign country for so long,
Yeah.
with a new language, because that's pretty much my dream at some point in the near future is to live in another country for a few years. So it's really exciting for me, and it's also probably good for the listeners to see or to hear or see if it's on YouTube, how you went about learning Croatian. That might be interesting. So it's a very big topic, but do you have any? Maybe you could tell us about. Do you have like a study routine, or did you have one, or was it just more like random learning, if that makes sense?
I wouldn't call it like my learning. I wouldn't say it was learning as such. So I do come from a Croatian background. So when I did move here at 21 years old, but I knew some Croatian. So anybody listening to this podcast, if you can understand 70 to 90% of what we're saying, you can understand a lot more than what I could at that time. Even though I grew up in Australia, like my parents did speak a little bit of Croatian, this, that, and we did go to Croatian language school, like Saturday morning school. Yeah, but no one learned anything. That was just like a social gathering sort of thing. Like, and by no chance did we learn. Like, we could understand. And then when I moved here, I could get by. So technically, what I mean by get by was I could have a conversation. I could ask for directions because I traveled for holidays before. I did know the area and that. But watching TV, I was just like, yeah, nah, this isn't happening. I can't understand anything. Reading the newspaper, same thing. So basically, I moved here, and then about 2 weeks later, I was doing my master's thesis. I enrolled in a language school here, but then I also had the same problem. Like, this was effective, but I was put in such a high level because I could speak and I could understand, not like a native, not like anything that I can today in Croatian, but my grammar was just shocking. So then it was really strange. The teacher's like, how can you speak? You can understand, but your grammar, like, I'd be making grammar mistakes. Uh, if you're an English learner at the moment and you're making grammar mistakes like prepositions, articles, like every second one was just atrocious. It was really bad. But then I did that, and then I found the problem that I was speaking a lot of English to people, and then it was just pretty much the same thing that I'd gone through back in Australia. Like, in Australia, I didn't care. We pretty much rejected the language, and I always did because I just saw no use for it. But then here, I saw a need for it because I needed to get a job, and I didn't think it was useful for me to be meeting friends like from Germany, America, from the UK, and would all they're like, "Oh, you speak English? Oh, my English is perfect level. Let's just speak in English." And then this wasn't beneficial for me. And I also felt that the resources we were learning in the classroom was very directed to general Croatian and not specialized like business, work, everyday settings. So I started to independently learn. Some things that I did was just listen to a lot of TV shows, watch a lot of TV shows, sorry. But I actually watched Turkish TV shows with Croatian subtitles. So there's a lot of
Ooh.
like Spanish, Turkish, and then I had, and back when I moved here, Scheherazade, 1001 Nights. I think it's a really popular soap opera, Turkish soap opera. I watched that with Croatian subtitles, and I can I think it does in Turkish, so I improved my listening skills in Turkish, but this really improved my reading skills in Croatian, and everyone was talking about this TV show, so I had to watch it, and I started learning like that. So people were watching TV shows, I started watching them, and then I just started challenging myself, being curious. Okay, what are they talking about? What are they doing? Started buying the daily newspaper. When I moved here, the newspaper was a thing to read the paper still. Like, so I'd buy the paper, I'd come home, have my coffee, I'd read the paper, I'd do some writing, and every day I'd be speaking because I was living here. My family was back in Australia. So whenever I did speak to people, it was always in Croatian. And I'd created that environment. So, of course, I did have my friends still from the language course and English speaking friends. But I also tried to, for example, I joined some sports clubs to just meet Croatian speakers. I joined communities to meet Croatian speakers. I tried to divide like English speaking friends and Croatian friends so that I could get more Croatian friends and improve my Croatian fluency. Like, my learning was more based out of interests and needs, and then filling in the blanks with grammar, listening. And I found that to be really effective for me, like really, really effective even to this day.
Hmm. That's really interesting. I mean, what I picked out from that is that you focused on something you maybe you love to do or that you would be
Yeah.
doing anyway. So like probably watching like a Turkish soap opera is not the best way to learn Croatian, but you made it
No,
work for you, right? You found a way to make it work and you did what you loved with, try to put Croatian in there somehow, right?
because so they speak in Turkish, but they have the subtitle. They don't dub the TV shows to Croatian, they put the
Hmm.
subtitles. And this really helped me with my reading skills, like a lot, a lot.
Hmm.
And especially to read really fast because they say something and it appears and then it disappears. I remember the beginning, I'm like, I didn't, what
You
are
got
you
like one
doing?
letter in.
Have you ever watched a TV show like that? Just even when you go like these short films, documentary, like French documentary films or German, then they have them in English. I'm not used. Are you used to watching TV shows and movies with subtitles in the UK?
I don't do too many, but I mean, for my language learning, I do occasionally. And my languages are all like Asian, so like there'll be like Chinese, and I think that's even harder because like
Yeah.
it's so hard because it's not in your natural like the alphabet you recognize. So it's like you're trying to like keep up with the characters, and as you said, I just get to one word in, and it next sentence already. So it's a challenge.
For me, I actually tried in one of my pursuits of learning my interests. I took up a Chinese course, so beginner Chinese course here at the institute, like part of the embassy or something, Confucius Institute.
Oh yeah.
And for me, like I really need to have like an interest in the language. Like I've been to China, but there wasn't a strong enough interest. I'm just like, Chinese is going to be the next big language. Let's try it. But that wasn't really like a good enough motivation. And then that's why I clearly didn't continue with it. But I just remember the tones, and like we spent like 3 weeks of like doing nothing. But in my opinion, it was nothing and just tones. How how did you start learning it? Like it's
Hmm.
completely different to anything.
Yeah, like that's a really good point. So yeah, for those who don't know, Chinese has four tones. So like, depending on the tone, how high or low
Yeah,
the pitch is, I guess, then the word will have a different meaning, right? Or it can have a different meaning. And for me, so I think it can be really boring. Like when you first start learning Chinese, it's like let's have 5 or 10 lessons on tones, and it's
yeah.
really important, but it's not exciting, not interesting at all. So I kind of had one lesson with a teacher, and I kind of did some practice from a book looking at tones. I kind of roughly understood, and then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna get into it. I'm sure I'll pick it up later. So I started like learning vocabulary, having conversations. My tones were terrible, but I kind of had faith that I would, as long as I don't forget them, I would naturally, maybe not naturally, but with some effort, I would improve over time. Still not perfect, but I think a bit better than it used to be, I guess.
I can't judge you because I've never like it was just so when some English speakers they're like with the letter R, rolling the R, like my
Mhm.
name, Adriana, Adriana, and then I like always get frustrated. No, it doesn't annoy me, but I'm just like, my name's Adriana for your own good. And like it doesn't bother me if you call me Adriana, but in English we say Adriana and or the th sound. And I just remember how frustrated I was in those Chinese classes.
Hmm.
And can you imagine how frustrated our students must be with the R and the TH?
Yeah,
And
totally. Have you ever tried to learn Spanish or a language with the rolled R? Because I tried to learn Spanish a few years ago, and I was like, I remember sitting on my beanbag in my room, like for hours trying to roll my R's, and I to this day cannot do it. So I imagine it's the same in reverse for some people in English.
yeah, I can, like Croatians, they roll their R's. I don't know, Adriana. I don't think, I don't say it right and I have an accent, but I know that I don't, there's worse. There's
Yeah.
worse English speakers that don't roll their R as much as me, but I know mine is nowhere near perfect. But the R isn't a problem. It's this in Croatia. Do you know what the capital of Slovenia is?
Yeah. Shall I say it?
Yeah, because it's a try.
Lu Ljubljana.
So this L, this LJ is one letter, and in Slovenian and Croatian, and this is really hard. And this is like Ljubljana is the city, and I'm
Uh,
probably saying it wrong, but it's so hard. Like other words with this Ljubičice, like that was just a headache to try and figure out this and yeah, but
it yeah, it's so interesting. All these different languages. There's always at least one really tough thing to pronounce. I feel like English has a lot of them, um, depending on where you're from as well. But yeah, that's really interesting one. Hmm. And I think if I heard you correctly before, you were saying you used to struggle with the grammar at the
yeah,
beginning. Did the no, no, and then when you went to Croatia, you saw you had the need to learn, which I
yeah,
always think is so important. Like you need to have a need. You
yeah.
need to have some kind of reason. Well, it helps because otherwise it's just a hobby and there's not that pressure on you. But
Yeah, just so
yeah.
like back in Australia, but I wouldn't consider that learning at all. So just
Hmm.
just forget it.
Okay.
There was no need, no interest. It was just like a social gathering.
Yeah.
Literally, that was not learning. But I just say like, just say that it's out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I mean, I love to think that way though. Like, even if you don't have a need to learn English or whatever language, I like to try and find out how you can make it a need. So you could like
Mhm.
go to like a, go to a yoga class
Yeah.
that's in the language you're learning, and you have that need in that time to understand. Otherwise, you can't participate. I think that's helpful. But anyway, my question was, did the talking and the more conversation, did that fix your grammar problem?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
So for me, I always tell my students just go out there, start writing, start speaking, especially somebody that's able to understand this podcast. There's no reason for you not to go out there and you will make mistakes. But then it's easy for me to say that because by nature, I'm the type of person, I don't care if I make a mistake. Even like throughout this podcast recording, like I think some of us by nature, it doesn't matter what language you're speaking, we just deal with failures a little bit differently. Like, I still get ashamed and really embarrassed, and I'm just like, "Ah, there's not much you can do from it. Like, just move on. Life goes on. Drink some cement, harden up, and like maybe that resonates with me, and I can live with it. But maybe you're not like that, Michael. Or somebody listening to this isn't like that, and I completely understand. And for me, it just made sense. It didn't make sense in the course that I was taking here. I remember, so there was a student from China in our class. He was scoring 100% on all his grammar tests. Do you know what it means to score 100% on a Croatian grammar test? Croatian grammar is really, really hard. It's one of the hardest in this region. I think Slavic languages, or yeah, they have so many. Like German has 5 of those partashi. They have like 7 or 8. Anyway, he was a genius and he could like vocab scored really high, but when it comes to speaking and listening, low, low. And
mm,
then when I was looking at him, I'm like, so what's the point? You're living here, you can score high on a grammar test. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't like congratulations, you know the grammar book, you know the rules. But if you can't go out and speak and understand, what's the point in knowing the grammar? And that's why, because I saw that in the classroom and I was put at a high level, but it was weird. Everyone else was better in grammar and in vocab, but I was better in speaking and listening. And then I just let it come. So going out speaking, interacting, so many people laughed at me, made mistakes, but that was just a part of the learning process for me. And uh, I I really think that's why I was able to speak fluently really fast because I just went out, made mistakes, learned from them, analyzed them, kept pushing myself. And yeah,
mm. Yeah, awesome, awesome. I think that's amazing. I think it also works the other way too, where there are some people who are, so, yeah, yeah. So I lost my train of thought. So like you can be like really good at grammar and then
yeah.
really weak at speaking, and then the reverse, right? Where like you can have, maybe I don't know if you say that was you, but some people are so good at speaking, but then they'll just do terribly on the exam. Yeah, and I've heard of people who have like passed, got the highest levels of exams and everything like that, but when they go to the country, they can't communicate. So it's like a very different kind of knowledge, isn't it? I don't know,
I
maybe
think it's
both would be
important to
good ideally,
find
but
that balance,
yeah.
like somehow to find that balance. And it just depends. That guy in the class, I'm not because he was studying as part of like Croatian as part of his university, and that's what he needed, and he needed to score high. And I understand that. And then I think he was going into a diplomatic role, and they required perfect grammar. And I'm sure that later on in time, it would all mold together. But even at intermediate level, I just felt frustrated. I don't need perfect grammar. Like, yeah, okay. So at back then, I wasn't teaching English. I was looking. I'd finished. I have a master's in international business, and I was looking for work in my field. And I just wanted to get my email correspondence up to scratch, negotiation strategies, interview skills, etc. And that's why I didn't find this. And I know that And you can get away with this in a business field, depending who you work with. Like you need to have good, but if you're a people's person, you can get by sort of. So like that was my logic, but that's also my character sort of thing. Uh, yeah, and I think it really depends on the person, how they learn, what they need. Uh, it's not it's not that black and white, like how I learn or how that person learns or how you learn.
Hmm. Yeah, totally, totally. I do kind of envy you in a way because I'm not quite the same. I try my best to be, outgoing and, practice and not worry about my mistakes. But I think naturally I really feel bad when I make mistakes. So I think for me, maybe this is helpful for listeners too who are similar to me. I like to try to do little things these days to push myself out of my comfort zone. Um, Try to kind of do things to stop the fear of people judging me. So
Mhm,
like, I don't know, it might be like if something, it's really silly stuff. Like I'm on the train and there's like a place near me that has a really funny
mhm,
sounding name. And
mhm.
whenever they say it on the train, I just like repeat it, but in like a really funny voice. And sometimes people look at me like, what is he doing? I'm just like doing like this baby voice, I guess. And it's not related to language learning, but doing that kind of makes me feel like less worried about what people think of me. And I think that can relate to language learning too, because if I make a mistake, it doesn't really matter. No one cares. But you just have this idea that everyone does, don't you?
Well, it really like going back, I moved here because I wanted to live here.
Mm,
And then I sort of it's no one's fault but my fault that I wanted to move here, right? So this
mm,
is my logic. I sort of like put in my head. Like to live here, I need to speak the language. And I'm gonna make mistakes and I'm gonna look silly, I'm gonna look dumb in a lot of situations. Whose fault is that? It's my fault because I wanted to live here. Could have stayed in Australia, right? And then there was no point, like I never saw those mistakes as just uh I needed to get food. I needed to get a job. I needed to pay the bills. And then I think my need was really strong that I really didn't care about the mistakes as long as I got what I need to get done. So, maybe if I wanted to learn Croatian back in Australia, like, so pretty much that was like a Saturday morning sport, and our parents like, you got to go there, and we're like, we don't want to go, you got to go. So we went. Like that's the extent of our motivation. But what I was gonna say with like then maybe if I really wanted to and I made some mistakes, then I would like felt bad. But why do you feel bad? Like I honestly, Michael, if it's not, if you're able to still, I don't know, do things, aren't you richer than somebody
mm.
else who can't speak a language by simply trying?
That's a really good question. I think for me, when I think about it, it's probably this feeling of like, the word should, like I should be better because if I could think like, I've been learning for so many years. It's this comparison game too. Like if I compare myself to people who have been learning the same number of years, I'm not as good as them.
But why
Um,
would you compare to them? Everybody's
but
different.
exactly, exactly. That's what I'm always reminding myself is that, and it's what I tell students too, is like, don't compare yourself, don't do that. But I'm not always good at practicing what I preach. So it's something that I'm trying to practice, trying to remind myself. There's no sense of saying where you should be, but I think it's really good, helpful for me to look back on where I've come and like, wow, I can
Exactly.
actually have this conversation and like celebrate those little wins. I try to do that as much as I can.
Because I look back, when you think about your, I don't know, in English, how many, this is going to sound so bad. I'm sorry if I'm being so like, like just a really bad person. But how many people do you have in the world that speak in English, but they speak really bad English, like native English speakers that use shocking words, aren't able to articulate themselves? Like, I'm not going to go into labels and everything, but I'm sure you get what I'm trying to say.
Hmm,
And
definitely.
then, when you think of that, and if somebody's trying, like, aiming to speak English, there's some native English speakers that aren't able to articulate themselves correctly. And with the words, and they've gone through kindergarten, primary, high school, uni, everything, even have high educations. Who knows? Let's see, maybe not. But if you're learning a second language, if you aren't able to communicate, get what you want done, and sound a little bit, half decent, what's wrong? Sometimes you make a mistake. I don't really see a problem in it. I think there's no reason to judge. Like, everyone's different. When it comes to accent, for example, I know a lot of people get really insecure about their accents. And when I speak in Croatian, I have an accent, right? And then I just joke now. I'm like, yeah, I have an accent from diaspora. Because when someone meets me, first of all, like, so Croatians abroad who live abroad, they usually sound like me, right? And when someone meets me, like, hey, and then I start talking, they're like, where are you from? And I'm like, oh, I'm from Australia. Like, you can hear it. But is that necessarily bad? Like, I get annoyed because people just like, oh, why'd you, then all these sets of questions come up, but then, I don't think that's something bad. What, I don't sound like a native, and what's a big deal?
Mm, that's a really good point. I think maybe we should, I don't know if we can do this, but there should be a difference in how, I mean, there is a difference in how learners of English and native speakers are seen. And, as
Mhm.
you said, native speakers have all these different accents, some of which I cannot really understand. Um, all these mistakes, all this slang, things that you'd never see in an English teacher, really, a lot of
Yeah.
stuff. But when it comes to people learning English, there's this idea, maybe a false idea, that they all have to sound the same, like the Queen or something, in terms of British English. And it's really strange, isn't it? Because there isn't just one English. It's, if you can communicate, if you can get your point across and, yeah, sound kind of decent, then that should be the goal, I think, right?
That is my goal, but I think because I grew up in Melbourne and just it was really multicultural, so around a lot of immigrants, my parents themselves were immigrants, and then I just saw, it's just the need to communicate with people and to, uh, live.
Mm,
So, especially like say when the Iraq War was happening, we had a lot of immigrants come from Syria, from Iraq, from those countries in primary school. And I just remember, we grew up together. So some of us primary school and then high school, and then we stayed in contact later on. And then just from those immigrants, like their main goal was to, send for the children on the playground to learn the language so they could play with us, so that we could be friends, so that they could learn and, live a normal life. Then, yeah, sure, they have accents to this day. They have accents. Maybe they mispronounce words, but we still consider them to be, like, yeah, okay, maybe background, but Aussies. I don't. It's a little bit different, and I think that my perception of that maybe is a little bit different. Somebody, for example, in Zagreb, you didn't. When I first came here, you didn't have a lot of immigrants, but in Australia, there's so many immigrants. Even the Australians, like let's say, uh, 100 years ago, they came from the UK.
yeah,
Like, yeah, everyone's an immigrant in some way.
yeah.
And then I think there's a lot more tolerance there, and just so used to and exposed to different accents. In Zagreb, for example, here you have one sort of accent, and then you have different regions that come together, and it's a shock because people here aren't so used to that. But maybe I'm just more used to it, so I'm not so critical of that, and I just understand that there are places where people live like that, they get by, and it's nice, and yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really cool. Um, I mean, I don't really have anything to follow up on that. I think that's,
Sorry, I just ranted on.
no, that's perfect. It's perfect. I think there's a lot of value in what you're saying. I would say maybe I've learned a bit from you today. I feel like you give me like it's like a kick up the bum, like
Oh,
a strong
thanks.
reminder um, that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you make mistakes, and I think that's a nice thing to remember. So
Yeah,
speaking of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, I'm just gonna add it in, for example, when I do make a mistake, sometimes my husband or like even my parents will correct me. I'm like, dude, you try living here and getting by every single day. Like if I make one mistake, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't need a reminder. I really think it's about how your character. Everybody's different, but yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, don't try to be someone you're not, I guess, is always good advice in life.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, speaking of mistakes, like, I wanted to ask you, this is a recurring question on the podcast. Have you made any kind of embarrassing or funny or bad mistakes in learning Croatian, that you could share? And maybe, I think the purpose of this is to, as we've been doing, to kind of let people know that it's not a big deal. You can laugh at yourself, and it might be a funny story as well.
So maybe like language mistake, actually learning, or maybe when speaking, if I said a mistake.
Mm, what I had in mind was like speaking. So
Okay, yeah, I've got
there,
one.
okay, yeah.
So my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, they were over here. So me and my husband, we speak in Croatian. They came over, I don't know, we were having coffee or something, sitting around, and we were talking about something. I can't remember the word that I said or the sentence, something like that. But I was asking something about my brother-in-law's parents. But then I think I mispronounced the word, or I used the wrong word in the wrong situation. And I asked if his parents were like sleeping together. They know something. I'm just started laughing. I'm like, yeah, whoa, whoa. And this was recently. So I've been here for about 9.5 years, but I can't remember what it was. I wish I could remember, but I just remember everyone just laughing because they know that, I wouldn't ask that.
So they knew it was a
It was just,
mistake.
yeah, they knew it was a mistake, and they just so yeah. My support network is very supportive. They just laugh at me. But, I can't. I didn't learn much from that mistake because I can't remember that mistake. But I remember I was embarrassed because, we are close, but still, it's not something you want to be saying about someone else's parents when you're
Mm.
having something like that. And I've mispronounced also one common pronunciation mistake I have, which I still today I can't perfect, and I just get angry. My husband's always not angry. It's just if I put my head down to it, I'd be able to figure it out. But it's just, I think I'll live my whole life in Croatia and I'll never be able to say these two words correctly. So, candle and flowers. So, one is pronounced as svijeće and the other one is svijeće. So, it's a C and a S sound.
To me, it
See?
sounds the same.
It pretty much is. And then I'm like, I just I can't change these two sounds.
Mm.
And I've tried hard, even with the spelling. Like I have to remember florist, and then I'll know it's a C. So I make the link, and I'm like, see, florist, candle, svijeće, no,
Ah.
svijeće, candle, svijeće. But anyway,
So you have like that mnemonic, that kind of way to help you remember what it is
yeah.
at first. Yeah.
And then I remember the florist, like on this one square here in the city. And candles, yeah, is the other one, the S. But
Mm.
constantly, and then my husband's like, "Свечи, свечи, свечи, свечи." I'm like, candles, leave me alone. And but that's my bad, and that's actually, if someone's been listening to this podcast, like maybe at times I could do a little bit more to fix my Croatian, and maybe my Croatian would be near to perfect if I did actually like fix that and care enough to fix it. And just that maybe I'm a little bit careless in that. If I just constantly remind myself, it'd be better. But
Mm.
that's just me as it is. So those are two, yeah, mistakes. They're common
Yeah.
mistakes.
Good one. Good one. I would probably, with the last one, it's like, even if you say the wrong thing, they can probably guess from the context, right? Like,
Yeah.
it might not always be a big deal. So yeah, maybe it's not something to worry about too much. But
It is, but if I'm talking, say for example, if I'm talking to maybe a friend and my husband's listening, and then he'll notice that person is like, looking puzzled, and he'll be like, and then he'll say the right version.
oh, I see.
And then I'm like, yeah, that's why I say maybe I could be more pedantic and fix that. But
Mhm.
it's just, I have with other things, with that, it's just so hard for me. And I've tried, but I think I've just given up after so long. I'm like, it's just always going to be difficult. But
Mm.
for me.
Yeah, there was always some tricky ones. Like for me, I'm even too scared to like try it. But like in Japanese, that's the R is quite difficult in Japanese, as with many languages. They all have like a different R, so it's kind
Mhm.
of like a mixture of L, D, and R all into one sound. And I'm
Uh-huh.
sometimes I
Okay.
do it too much, sometimes I don't do it enough, but it's kind of like rui, which is
Uh-huh.
like
I would, yeah,
that in
that's
English
hard.
that would be RUI. But what I
Rui.
find really difficult is when it's the Japanese R followed by an N. It I don't know how they do it, but again with practice I could do it. But one example, I think the word for like your rights, like human rights, is like ken and then ri. But then together I cannot say it. It's like ken. My tongue can't move that quickly. Like kenri,
Kendroi.
kenri
Kendroi.
is really hard. Um, so that's something that I always struggle with. I have to kind of say it slowly every time. But again, I could probably do it if I practiced a lot. I really focused on it. I think it's quite like kind of like you. Um, there's a lot of other things I enjoy doing more than focusing on that. So maybe one day.
It it really depends. Like I remember in the beginning when I moved here, my head would hurt and my mouth would hurt because just so much new information, you have to process it, and then I'd have to think about how to say it. Think of like the headaches are real. No, but like I don't know how to say it, but my head would hurt, and it's not because of it's just thinking Croatian, processing the Croatian language, and then also my mouth. But it gets easier in time, and like that lit sound is a lot easier for me. Like it's like some sounds are easier, but I remember in the beginning it was just so hard. Uh, Doing this mouth work, like you're saying, you can't pronounce it. You can. It just takes it takes time. It's hard. It's like working out because you are technically exercising a new muscle.
Yeah. Yeah. When I first started learning Chinese, my mouth would hurt after 5 minutes, and now it doesn't. So I think, as you said, you have got better. So just like you said earlier in the episode, focus on how far you've come and
Yeah,
not compare yourself to what other people can do and what you cannot do. So I think that's a
exactly.
nice takeaway. Yeah. Okay. Um, I also had a question I wanted to ask you, which actually you are my first ever Australian guest on the show. So I'm very happy. I don't know why it took me so long, but I'm really happy you could join.
Thank you.
So I want to take advantage of this. Do you have any kind of cool Australian English expressions or slang or anything like that that you could share? Because I really don't know many, but I know there is a lot that you use. Maybe not you, but Australians.
Like there's a lot of I'm going to share some words that I use a lot, like mate, arvo, servo, and bottle-o. Uh, do you know what arvo is?
All I can think of is avocado.
Okay, so that's avo. Like avo, we also say avo, avocado. Arvo is afternoon. Servo is service station, like a petrol station.
Wow.
And bottle-o is bottle shop, so a shop where it serves alcohol.
Whoa,
So
that's so
very
cool. Wait, so how would you spell like Arvo? How would you spell that?
ARVO,
Okay.
bottle-o, like bottle, and then that line, O, bottle-o, and servo would be SERVO, servo. And okay, there's reasons why I've chosen this, maybe just like growing up. But you know, in Australia, okay, let's talk about cultural differences a little bit. Like here in Croatia, it's not common, you know, when you're going for a walk, if you see someone, you may say, just give them a head nod or just be like, hey, just hi. But in Australia, it's common, maybe it's a phrase that I like. It's like, hey, how you going, mate? How you going, mate? And it's really common, and people just say this. And like, if I bumped into you, we didn't know each other, we're just walking like on the footpath. How you going, mate? And like, yeah, I'm fine. Good, thanks. You. But you don't care. Like, you're
Hmm.
not going to stop and have a conversation with these people. But you do this here in Europe, people will expect you to have a conversation with them. So this is a cultural difference. Like legit. Like I just really had this epiphany like a year ago because this happened to my sister. She was doing the Aussie thing here. And then I'm like, that's why everyone talks to me because I've been doing this Aussie thing here.
Oh.
Like it's my fault, not their fault.
You're like,
So
well, everyone here's so friendly.
no, but like that's really common. And don't be shocked if I go for walks quite often in the forest and that, and then just saying, "Hey, how's it going, mate?" It's really common. Even when you walk into a shop, "Hey, how's it going, mate?" Uh, really, really, people are very friendly in that. Mate, like people call people mate all the time. There's also this word like Sheila. It's not that common. I really don't like it. I've never like some guy, I don't know, I just find it to be a little bit sexist, but
Mm.
it's not really, I don't know why I do, but I just sort of have that impression, but it's not bad, but
Is it like in Scotland they say lass, like lad and lass? Is it kind of like that? If you know that, like
yeah, but
you're a
I
good
think that's
lass, you're a
more
good girl.
common.
Okay.
Some people say that in Australia as well. It's
Mm.
not that common, but like you can, if you're outside of Melbourne, they'll say it. Like Sheila as well, it's just not something that I like. So
Yeah.
I don't know,
I've
that.
heard it in stereotypes, but I've never heard anyone say it for real. But I don't have any
Exactly.
Australian friends, so I don't know.
Yeah, like more stereotypes.
Yeah,
But Arvo, like, what are you doing this Arvo? Do you want to meet this Arvo? It's just so short,
I love
every
that.
day, very common. Bottle-o, yeah, we have these shops and there's just alcohol there. Like, let's go to the Bottle-o, we'll grab a bottle of wine. I don't drink alcohol. Like, there's different slang for beer and that. I personally hate beer, so sorry, I can't talk about that. And I don't even know that slang because I know it when I hear it, but when beer is just disgusting. And servo, because you need to stop at a servo.
Mm.
And I don't think I've ever said petrol station. It's always servo. I need to stop at the servo, go there.
Oh, that's so interesting. We definitely don't have that level of, I don't know. It seems to me like we don't have that level of slang in the UK. Like we always just say petrol station. But I've never heard those. I love that as well. So
Oh, and McDonald's, Macca's. I never say McDonald's, Macca's.
ah, in England, I don't say this because I don't know, I don't like it. But some people say Mackie D's. Do you say that? Mackie
Oh,
D's.
that's so interesting. Sorry, I really shouldn't laugh about Mackie D's.
It's quite funny sounding. It's quite
It
funny.
really does sound funny, but okay,
So you say
sorry. Whoever said
Macca's.
Mackie D's, you can laugh at Macca's because
Macca's. I like it. I like it. Yeah, it's really funny, and I think you have to have the Australian accent. It wouldn't work otherwise. But like, so did you say how you going? Is that what you said? How's you?
how you going, mate?
Ah, because
Or how you
in
going,
England
mate?
we might say like how's it going, but we never say how are you going.
You can also say how's it going, mate?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Mm,
why this phrase is really good is because you hear a lot of immigrants using this, and it's just really friendly. Like,
yeah.
people that migrate to Australia, they come and then they'll just be walking like, "Hey, how's it going, mate?" And you can hear they have like an accent, but you can hear they're using the Aussie intonation, and they're just like, "Oh,
Yeah. It's nice to pick up like little bits of casual language like that, isn't it? Wherever you go.
yeah."
I think in England we have one which is just all right, mate, which is
Hey, we have that
not
too.
so friendly, just like right, mate, really quick. Um, that's what we say every day. But again, it's the same where you're not really expected to give your life story, just kind of repeat it back. But I might start saying the Australian ones now. It sounds nice. I'll bring it over here.
Import it.
Yeah, I'll import it. Nice. Well, I think I don't want to take too much of your time, so I think we're almost up today. But we haven't. I think we've only scratched the surface. There's many things we haven't spoken about. Like we really didn't talk about your background in teaching. Maybe another time. I don't know. But would you be happy to like tell people where they can find out more about you, like what platforms you use, and I don't know if you're open to online lessons, whatever like that. You can let people know if you want.
Mhm. So if you're interested in learning with me, you can find me, check out my social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, English with Adriana. There you'll find sample lessons. So just a general idea of my accent, how I teach. A lot of my lessons combine, so if I'm teaching something, a lot of shadowing, imitation practice. So once you watch a video, you can actually practice, do something at that time, especially with my YouTube videos. Go check them out. I think they'll be really useful for you to start off with. If you are more serious about a daily learning plan, so I have a WhatsApp speaking club, the Fluency Academy. There, it's a structured daily learning plan from Mondays to Saturdays with speaking classes, with international global community, and I post a daily learning plan for you to focus on all areas. That's reading, listening, reading, listening, grammar, vocabulary, speaking. We do writing practice, basically a holistic approach to achieving your goals to drastically improve confidence speaking in English. All the details on my website, www.englishteacheradriana.com. And I think that's all. I have a podcast too. I have a podcast. It's on my website there too.
Perfect. So there's a lot there, but I will link everything in the
Yeah.
show notes in case people want to see it all in one place. And yeah, listeners, if anything that Adriana said resonated with you, if it was interesting, definitely check her out online. So yeah, thank you very much. It's so great to meet you, get to know you a bit, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's been a pleasure.
You have been listening to the Level Up English podcast. If you would like to leave a question to be answered on a future episode, then please go to levelupenglish.school/podcast. That's levelupenglish.school/podcast. And I'll answer your question on a future episode. Thanks for listening.